Okay, imagine this. It's the 14th century and the world's a total disaster zone. The Black Death is tearing through Europe like a horror movie villain, wiping out whole towns faster than you can say achoo. People are dropping like flies, and the ones still standing, they're locked in their houses, dodging everyone. Like they're avoiding a clingy ex. Sound familiar? Yup, it's got major 2020 vibes just with way worse BO and no Netflix to keep you sane. So how did our great-great-grand whatevers handle love when everything was going to hell? And what can their drama teach us about modern dating in our post-COVID world? Grab a snack because we're diving into the Plague's Lonely Hearts quarantine romance in the 14th century, a wild tale of love heartbreak and some seriously weird flirting moves. So let's set the stage. It's 1347 and the Black Death just rolled into Europe like that one friend who shows up uninvited, eats all your snacks and trashes your place. By the time it's over, it's taken out 30–50% of everyone. Streets are deserted, markets are closed, and paranoia is running the show. People are scared of their neighbors, their pals, even their own family. One cough and you're basically canceled. Quarantine's not just a vibe, it's how you survive. Families are boarding up windows, hiding out, and praying the plague skips their house, like it's playing a deadly game of tag. Now you're probably like, okay, cool. But what's this got to do with romance? Dude, everything. Humans are stubborn as heck. No matter how bad things get, we still want to flirt, fall in love, maybe sneak in a little hand-holding plague, or no plague. But back then, finding love during a pandemic wasn't exactly a picnic. Imagine trying to ask someone out when stepping outside could get you a one-way ticket to the grave. No Tinder, no Zoom dates, no you up. Texts at 2 a.m. Just you, your creepy plague mask, and a whole lot of hope. Here's the deal. Relationships were already a hot mess back then. Marriages were usually set up for cash, land, or clout, not because you thought someone was cute or funny. But the Black Death flipped that whole system upside down. With half the population gone, the dating pool was a ghost town. Single folks were either dead or hiding, and families were too busy trying not to die to play matchmaker. If you were single, your options were rough. Think swipe left on everyone, because they might be sick. And if you were married, good luck keeping things spicy when you're stuck in a tiny, stinky house with no toilet and death literally knocking. Let's talk about how you'd even flirt in the 14th century. You couldn't just roll up to someone's door with flowers. Those were probably blamed for spreading the plague anyway. You had to get crafty. Some old records, like stuff from Boccaccio's Decameron, talk about people shouting love poems across courtyards or tossing notes over walls to stay safe. It's like sliding into someone's DMs, but with way higher stakes. One wrong move and you're not just ghosted, you're toast. And don't get me started on the superstitions. People didn't know germs were a thing. They thought the plague was bad air, God's wrath, or even the stars being out of whack. So flirting meant dodging all kinds of weird rituals. Want to impress your crush? Don't sneeze or they'll think you're cursed. Want to send a love letter? Better soak it in vinegar first, because that was their version of Purell. Romance wasn't about candlelit dinners. It was more like hope this flower doesn't give you boils. But here's the wild part. The Black Death didn't just mess up romance, it changed it. With so many people dying, folks started rethinking what mattered. If you might not make it to next Tuesday, why waste time on a lame marriage or a May crush? Some people went full YOLO, sneaking out of quarantine to see their boo, even if it meant dodging curfews or pissed off priests. Others said screw it to arranged marriages and started picking partners based on actual vibes. Romantic, right? Well, kinda. It was still the 14th century, so vibes usually meant this guy's got a solid farm and no fever. Now let's zoom to today. We've all been through our own quarantine hell, right? Stuck in our apartments, swiping on apps trying to flirt over laggy Zoom calls. If you think modern dating's rough, try shouting your feelings from a balcony while your neighbor prays you don't infect them. The similarities are wild. Just like our medieval ancestors, we've had to figure out how to connect when everything's a risk. Getting ghosted sucks, but at least it doesn't come with a side of plague. So what kept love going strong back then? How did people keep the spark alive when the world was crumbling? And what can their story teach us about finding love, or at least not losing our minds when life gets chaotic? Hang tight, because we're about to dive deeper into the messy, hilarious, and kind of inspiring world of plague time romance. Trust me, it's a trip. All right, so we figured out that chasing love during the Black Death was like playing a game of spin the bottle where the bottle might kill you. But let's get into the nitty-gritty of how our 14th century peeps actually made it happen. Spoiler, it wasn't all lovey-dovey poems and roses. It was chaotic, messy, and sometimes straight up ridiculous. But somehow, through all the madness, people kept the romance alive. And I'm not just talking about surviving long enough to get a second date. Let's start with the social scene, or what was left of it. Before the plague, medieval Europe had romance on lock. If you were a peasant, your parents picked your spouse, usually someone who could handle a plow or churn butter without whining. If you were fancy, your marriage was basically a business deal for land or power. Love. That was a bonus, like finding an extra potato in your soup. But when the Black Death hit, it was like someone yeeted the whole rule book. With half the population gone, the usual systems poof stopped working. Families were wiped out, villages were empty, and the whole matchmaking game was toast. This chaos actually gave people a weird kind of freedom. With fewer folks around to enforce the rules, some started breaking them. Old records like ones from Florence talk about young people sneaking out of quarantine to hook up in secret. It's like sneaking out to a party during lockdown, but with higher stakes. They'd meet in empty houses or quiet corners, whispering sweet nothings while watching for the plague cops. And it wasn't just reckless kids, widows and widowers, newly single after losing their partners, were out there looking for love again. Life was short and nobody wanted to die alone. But here's the kicker: quarantine didn't just make dating hard, it made it an emotional roller coaster. The Black Death wasn't just killing people, it was messing with their heads. Everyone was scared, grieving, or paranoid. Try flirting when you're both wearing herb-stuffed masks and the whole town's muttering about the apocalypse. Not exactly romantic, plus trust was hard to come by. Show up to a date with a cough. Your crush isn't thinking, maybe it's just a cold, they're bolting. So how'd they pull it off? They got super creative. Letters were the MVP of long-distance romance. Couldn't meet up. You'd write these over-the-top love notes and get a brave or broke messenger to deliver them. These weren't just, hey, you're hot texts. They were full-on poetry because you had to stand out without a cute selfie or a clean health record. Some folks even got musical strumming lutes or singing from their windows to catch their crush's eye across the street. It's like a medieval Zoom karaoke date, but with more fleas. And let's talk about the community or lack thereof. Normally, medieval villages were like nosy group chats. Everyone knew everyone's business. Your neighbors, your priest, even your cow probably had an opinion on who you should marry. But the plague, it turned that community vibe upside down. With so many people gone, it was every heart for itself. You had to figure out romance without the usual village gossip network, which was both a blessing and a curse. No meddling aunties, but also no one to vouch for your crush's non-plague status. So we've been through the chaos of the Black Death, where finding love was like trying to flirt in the middle of an apocalypse movie, herb-stuffed masks, vinegar-soaked letters and all. Our 14th century ancestors were out there dodging death while still chasing butterflies in their stomachs. But how did they not just give up on love altogether? And what does their stubborn pursuit of romance tell us about surviving tough times then and now? Let's wrap up the medieval love story, pull some lessons from it, and figure out why this matters for us. Modern folks swiping through apps in our sweatpants. Let's rewind a bit to recap the madness. The Black Death wasn't just a health crisis, it was a full-on societal gut punch. Half the population poof gone. Villages turned into ghost towns, families were torn apart, and the usual rules of love and marriage totally trashed. People were sneaking out of quarantine to steal a kiss, shouting poetry across courtyards or strumming lutes like medieval rock stars, all while praying they didn't catch the plague from a stray breeze. It was wild, messy, and honestly, kind of inspiring. These folks weren't just surviving, they were fighting for connection in a world that felt like it was ending. Sound familiar? Yeah, we've all had our own version of that, haven't we? Stuck indoors trying to keep the spark alive over pixelated FaceTime dates or awkward virtual happy hours. What's crazy is how the Black Death didn't just disrupt romance, it rewrote the script. With so many people gone, the old systems of arranged marriages and family meddling started to crumble. Survivors were like life's too short for a bad match. Some started picking partners based on actual feelings, not just who had the best cows or the fanciest title. It wasn't all hearts and flowers, let's be real. It was still the 14th century, so feelings sometimes meant this guy's got a pulse and a decent harvest. But still, that shift toward choosing love over convenience, that was huge. It laid the groundwork for how we think about relationships today, even if we're still figuring it out between swipes and ghosting. Now let's talk about what kept these plague area romantics going. Resilience, that's what. These folks were dealing with death tolls that make our worst days look like a mild inconvenience, yet they still found ways to connect. They leaned on creativity, writing those flowery letters, singing from windows, and they leaned on each other. Community might have been fractured, but the ones who survived often banded together, sharing resources, stories, and sometimes sneaky rendezvous. It's like they figured out that love or even just a good crush could be a lifeline when everything else was falling apart. Compare that to us stressing over a bad Wi-Fi connection during a Zoom date. Our ancestors would probably roll their eyes and say, "You think that's a crisis? Try flirting through a plague mask." But here's the deeper bit. The Black Death didn't just teach people how to love. In tough times, it showed them how to adapt. Those who made it through weren't always the strongest or the luckiest. They were the ones who could pivot, whether that meant finding new ways to court someone or rethinking what a relationship could be. That adaptability shaped humanity's future. The plague shook up society so much that it sparked changes we still feel today, like more personal choice in who we marry or how we build families. It's wild to think that some of our modern ideas about love started in the ashes of a pandemic. Right now, let's bring it home. We've all been through our own version of chaos, haven't we? Maybe you spent 2020 perfecting your sourdough while swiping through Tinder, or maybe you're still figuring out how to flirt without a screen between you and your crush. The Black Death folks didn't have dating apps or delivery pizza to make quarantine bearable, but they had grit. They remind us that love, whether it's romantic, platonic, or just vibing with your cat, can be a reason to keep going, no matter how bad things get. But here's the question, are we as tough as they were? If the Wi-Fi goes out and the coffee shop closes, are we still going to fight for connection, or are we just going to sulk and binge another series? And that's not all. The plague didn't just teach our ancestors how to survive, it taught them how to rebuild. After the dust settled, people didn't just go back to the old ways. They built new communities, new traditions, even new ways of thinking about love and life. That's the real lesson here. Tough times don't just break us, they force us to grow. Whether it's a medieval plague or a modern crisis, the ability to adapt, connect, and maybe even flirt a little is what keeps us human. So what's our next move? How do we take that medieval grit and use Efiat for our own crazy world? That's where we're headed next, so stick around for the big finish. So here we are at the end of our deep dive into the Black Death's wild love stories. We've seen our 14th century ancestors dodge plague-ridden streets, shout love poems across courtyards, and basically YOLO their way through quarantine to keep the romance alive. It's been a trip part, rom-com part, horror flick, and all heart. But what does it all mean for us sitting here in our modern world, swiping on apps and whining about Wi-Fi? Let's wrap this up, pull some big lessons from the past, and figure out how to keep our own lonely hearts beating strong no matter what chaos life throws at us. Let's do a quick rewind. The Black Death was a straight-up nightmare. It wiped out 30–50% of Europe, turned villages into ghost towns, and made everyone paranoid about so much as a sneeze. Yet somehow people still found ways to flirt, fall in love, and sneak a kiss behind the plague patrol's back. They wrote epic love letters, sang from windows, and even started rethinking the whole marry for land, not love thing. Why? Because humans are stubborn, and even when the world's falling apart, we crave connection. It's like how we powered through our own quarantine days, trying to keep the spark alive over Zoom or matching with someone on Tinder just to feel something. Our ancestors didn't have dating apps, but they had the same drive to find love, or at least someone to share their last turnip with. What's wild is how the plague didn't just mess with romance. It changed the game for good. With half the population gone, the old rules, arranged marriages, family meddling started to crumble. People began choosing partners based on actual feelings, not just who had the best farm. It wasn't perfect, but it was a start, and it's part of why we get to stress over dating profiles instead of dowries today. Plus, those medieval lovebirds showed us what resilience looks like. They didn't just survive. They adapted, got creative, and kept their hearts open even when death was knocking. Compare that to us freaking out when our delivery pizza's late. I mean, come on, we've got it easy. So what's the big takeaway? The Black Death teaches us that love, whether it's with a partner, a friend, or just your cat, is a lifeline. Those 14th century folks could have given up, locked themselves away, and called it a day. But they didn't. They risked it all for a chance at connection, and that grit is what kept humanity going. It's a reminder that even in our cushy modern lives, we've got to fight for what matters. Yeah, dating apps can suck, and Zoom dates are awkward, but think about it, if our ancestors could flirt through a plague, we can handle a bad first date or a ghosting streak. And here's the deeper bit: the plague forced people to rebuild. After the bodies were buried and the air cleared, survivors didn't just go back to normal. They built new communities, new ways of living, and new ideas about love. That's the real magic of tough times. They don't just break us, they make us rethink everything. It's like how our own pandemic pushed us to rethink work relationships, even what makes us happy. Maybe we're not dodging the plague, but we've got our own challenges: climate change, tech overload, or just trying to afford rent. The lesson: adapt, connect, and keep showing up even when it's hard. So let's get real for a sec. If you were dropped into 1347, would you be out there tossing love letters over walls? Or would you be hiding under a blanket praying for a miracle? Be honest, how long do you think you'd last in a world with no coffee shops or dating apps? It's worth thinking about, because those medieval folks remind us that resilience isn't just about surviving. It's about living, loving, and maybe even laughing through the chaos. They didn't have Wi-Fi, but they had heart, and that's something we can all borrow a little of. Now here's where you come in. What do you think about these plague-era love stories? Would you have been a lute-strumming romantic or a nope, I'm staying single hermit? Drop your thoughts in the comments. I'm dying to hear how you'd handle medieval dating. And if this trip through history got you thinking, give us a like to keep the vibes going. Better yet, share this video with your friends. Maybe they need a reminder that love's worth fighting for, even in the worst of times. Oh, and don't forget to hit that subscribe button so you don't miss our next dive into the crazy, messy, awesome stories of our past. Trust me, we've got more where this came from. If you're itching to keep exploring, check out our video on the craziest survival stories in history next. It's packed with more wild tales about how our ancestors beat the odds, and I promise it'll make you feel like a total slacker in the best way. Thanks for hanging out with us today. It's been a blast sharing these stories with you. Stay awesome, keep those hearts open, and we'll catch you in the next one.